Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. According to statistics, approximately 30% of violent crimes committed around the world remain unsolved, despite the rapid development of technology and techniques, as well as the creation of extensive DNA databases. As a rule, most of these crimes are solved on hot tracks, but there are cases when the investigation lasts for years or even decades before the perpetrator is punished. But the Ellen Ray Greenberg case, which we will look at in this video, is interesting in that for many years of investigation, it has hardly moved forward. The case has been investigated with numerous irregularities, and over time, there are more questions than answers. The brutal murder of a young woman to this day remains a mystery, and what is remarkable is that the investigation is trying hard to prove that the cheerful Ellen, who was enthusiastically preparing for her own wedding, suddenly decided to leave her life. But let's try to understand everything in order. Who is Ellen Ray Greenberg? Ellen was born in New York in June 1993 in the family of Sama and George Greenberg. She was the only child of her parents, growing up in love and care. During high school, the girl was actively engaged in team sports and even gave hope as a promising athlete. She was an active, restless, and sociable child, but at the same time studied well, showing a special interest in the humanities. After graduating from high school, Ellen became a student at Pennsylvania State University, where she received a degree in public relations. But having started working on a specialty, Greenberg realized that this is not what she would like to devote her life to. Parallel to work, the girl enrolled in the correspondence department of the Pedagogical Institute. A few years later, she brilliantly defended her diploma and moved to Philadelphia, where she was hired to work in one of the local schools as a junior high school teacher. According to relatives, Ellen's life was going great. She was full of enthusiasm, made big plans for the future, and simply adored her work and small students. At the same time, Ellen met a boy with whom she had a torrid affair, and soon they began to prepare for their wedding. The girl's favorite was a young man named Samuel, or just Sam, Goldberg. He was from a fairly wealthy and well-known family in the city. His parents owned their own large business, and his uncle had a reputation as one of the best lawyers in the state. The young men met in 2009 at a party, thanks to their mutual acquaintances, and immediately liked each other. The friendly interaction quickly turned into a rapidly developing romantic relationship, and soon they decided to move in together and live together. On the eve of 2011, Sam made his beloved a proposal, which was the best gift for the new year. He gave her a beautiful diamond ring, and the couple began to prepare for the upcoming wedding, which was scheduled for the spring of the same year. Family members of both young people took the news with joy, and it seemed that the happiness of lovers can no longer interfere with anything. Ellen plunged headlong into the pleasant troubles associated with the wedding, making lists of guests and sending them invitations, choosing a venue and elements of decor for the event, trying on wedding dresses, trying to create their ideal image, and planning a honeymoon. It is noteworthy that almost all these issues the bride was engaged in independently, and the groom did not visibly participate in the process. But loved ones did not attach much importance to this, and Helen never complained. True, there were some oddities, to which everyone paid attention only after the tragedy occurred. In January 2011, the weather in the city was very snowy and frosty. On the 26th, Ellen went to work at school as usual, but close to noon there was a strong wind and a blizzard, so classes were canceled and students and teachers were sent home. Ellen returned to the apartment she and Sam shared. It was in a cozy apartment complex located in one of the quiet areas of the city. Soon Sam returned home as well. According to some reports, the couple that day quarreled, which was mentioned in passing, and Sam himself, but later he began to deny it. Close to 5 p.m., Sam decided to go to the gym located in the same apartment complex. He was gone for less than 1 hour, but when he returned, he could not get into the apartment because the door was locked from the inside. Sam first knocked loudly and insistently, then began calling his fiancé by name, which attracted the attention of neighbors, and then began calling her on the phone and sending messages. No one responded to his yelling, knocking, and calling, but it was heard that the phone was inside the apartment. Sam then went to the first floor of the building to the security guard to ask for help. Samuel explained the situation to him and asked if it was possible to open the front door, to which the guard replied that this was beyond his authority and that he could not leave his post by instruction. Then Sam went back up to his floor and decided to act on his own. He slammed his shoulder into the door, and the first time he did it, he managed to break the latch. It was quiet inside. Ellen's call was never answered, and when he entered the kitchen, he saw a gruesome sight. His fiancée was sitting on the floor, leaning back against the cabinet door, her body slashed with a knife and her clothes stained with blood. Sam immediately started calling emergency services, describing the situation, and when asked to check if the girl had a pulse, he acted strangely, asking several times if he really needed to do that. Then there was silence, and afterwards Sam suddenly stated that there was a knife sticking out in his fiancée's chest, which, allegedly, he had not noticed before. He also added that Ellen was obviously already dead. The police officers who arrived on the call were quite surprised and noted that they had never seen such a thing in their many years of practice. The door was indeed locked from the inside with a latch, which Sam had subsequently knocked off with his shoulder. There were no signs of forced entry or the presence of intruders in the room. Nothing had been stolen from the apartment. All valuables and money were still there. Nothing had been searched or touched. But the most interesting thing began when the body of the dead girl was examined. No signs of struggle or attempts to defend herself were found, as if everything happened suddenly, and the victim simply did not have time to react. On her body counted about 24 stab wounds of varying depth, and the final blow came to the heart, and it took Ellen's life. We will return to the blatant negligence with which the crime scene and the body of the deceased were examined a little later. This negligence allowed a lot of evidence to be missed and left a possible perpetrator at large. But even more strange was the behavior of the police, who even before the medical examination thought that Ellen had done this to herself. Panic attacks, visits to a psychologist, and prescription drugs. In favor of the version of voluntary departure from life was the fact that Ellen, since some time, began to suffer from anxiety disorder and panic attacks arising on its background. The situation was so serious that Ellen even sought help from a psychologist. Close, she tried not to complain, so as not to worry them, and relatives in turn associated changes in Ellen's behavior with stress and excitement before the wedding. However, the specialist who worked with Ellen prescribed her 2 medications, which she took regularly to combat her anxiety. As the psychologist himself would later report, neither of these drugs, neither together nor separately, could in any way aggravate Ellen's mental state and cause thoughts of death. The specialist also noted that despite her anxiety, the patient never had such thoughts. In addition, Ellen's friends and colleagues noticed that after she and Sam started living together, her behavior began to change. In addition to becoming anxious and restless, Ellen almost stopped making any decisions on her own. In every situation, Ellen would say that she needed to discuss it with her fiancé, that she couldn't give an answer without consulting him. Similar oddities noticed, and parents of the deceased, but every time her daughter tried to complain to them about her difficult emotional state, she added that Sam had nothing to do with it. And 3 weeks before the tragedy, Ellen told her mother that she wanted to quit school, drop everything, and return to her parents' house. Her mother was very surprised at her daughter's words, but assured her that she could return home at any time, and her parents would accept her without question. However, Ellen never brought up the subject again. Later, it was hypothesized that after the couple moved in together, Sam began to show violence towards his fiancée, and she was scared, afraid to tell anyone about it. The psychologist Ellen consulted did not confirm or deny this version, but noted that Ellen had difficulty articulating and expressing what she was experiencing and what was bothering her. It was as if she wanted to share something important, but the fear was stronger than that. Oddities and inconsistencies in the case. This unusual case from the very beginning raised a lot of questions, but most interestingly, no one even tried to find answers to them. The carelessness with which the examination of the crime scene and the body was conducted, as well as the expertise, is simply astounding. Many circumstances, facts, and evidence were simply ignored and irretrievably lost, and without them it was impossible to restore the full picture of the incident. To begin with, on the hands of the victim, was not found typical for self-defense injuries, which means that the girl was not trying to defend herself. But at the same time, on her body revealed numerous hematomas, which, judging by the degree of healing she received several weeks ago, the fiancé explained that these are most likely the consequences from playing team sports. However, Ellen's parents assured that their daughter had not visited gyms and playgrounds for a very long time because of the workload at work, as well as active preparations for the wedding. No suicide message was found. Ellen looked like a victim of a brutal massacre, but despite this, almost immediately a version of voluntary departure from life was voiced. Moreover, there were food, spices, and a cutting board on the table in the kitchen. So, according to the logic of the investigators, Ellen started to cook dinner, but suddenly changed her mind and decided to cut herself to death with a knife. Further, as I have already noted, on the body of the victim counted 24 penetrating wounds of varying depth, and forensic examination showed that 10 of them were inflicted from the back, so if the girl was attacked from behind, and some of them were serious enough, and if they did not kill Ellen immediately, then certainly deprived her of the ability to move and resist. It is simply impossible to inflict such injuries on oneself, and then to stick a knife into one's heart to the hilt, and this caused medical experts to doubt the originally announced cause of death. However, despite this conclusion, the investigation continued to insist on the previous version and refused to initiate criminal proceedings. The main argument was the absence of traces of strangers in the apartment, as well as the absence of signs of self-defense. By the way, there were also some doubts about the possibility of penetration into the apartment, because the latch on the inner part of the door was also very peculiar. It could be closed from the outside, but not completely. If the latch had been closed from the inside all the way, it would have been impossible to break it out with a single blow of the shoulder without damaging the doorway. But, judging by the nature of the damage, it was only partially closed, and it could have been done from outside the door. Although the victim's spouse or partner is usually the prime suspect in such cases, Sam has always remained above suspicion. No charges were brought against him, and it was only on the day of the incident that he was interviewed at the station in the presence of his uncle, who, as already mentioned, was a well-known and influential lawyer. Moreover, the whole picture and sequence of events of that day was reconstructed only according to the words of Sam Goldberg, who at times was confused in his own testimony, but wrote everything off as stress. Neighbors confirmed only that they heard the knocking and screaming of a guy who could not get into the apartment and called his fiancée, but that's all. Sam further claimed during his testimony that he went to the security guard for help, and the guard went upstairs with him and saw him kicking down the door. But the guard denied this information, saying that he had not left his post. Strangely enough, but the investigation did not return to this issue, considering this detail irrelevant. A recording from only one surveillance camera leading to the gym was also checked. It shows Sam walking towards the gym and then walking back. But in the interval between these two events, he could well have gone out through another passage and then returned to the gym in the same way. However, his alibi was not checked, and possible witnesses who could confirm that he had been working out or deny it were not even looked for. Sam did not call the police until an hour later, after he found the door locked and his fiancée unresponsive to knocking and shouting. In addition, the officer who took the call noted that Sam was acting strangely. Despite the fact that he was screaming and wailing, the specialist thought that it was a feigned panic, because Samuel was calm enough to answer questions, and his voice was not shaking. When he was asked to start resuscitative measures, he first doubted the need to do so, then quieted down, and then, and after all, reported about a knife sticking out of his girlfriend's chest, which earlier he allegedly did not notice. It is noteworthy that before calling the police, the guy called his parents and his lawyer uncle, who arrived at the apartment before the police. To the station to testify, as already mentioned, Sam also went together with his uncle. In addition, the next day Sam went back to the sealed apartment with the same uncle to get some personal belongings and took out all of Ellen's gadgets. They took 2 laptops, a phone, and a tablet of the deceased. When the investigation suddenly decided to check these devices a few days later, it turned out that the search queries included topics related to voluntary demise. The police officers who arrived at the scene made only a cursory examination of the scene and concluded that Ellen had taken her own life. Subsequently, despite the emergence of new details, they refused to change their verdict. The order of the wounds could not be established, but it is certain that the final blow was a blow to the heart. The medical examiner who conducted the autopsy found all this very strange, and he decided to conduct his own additional investigation, sending a sample of the spine of the deceased to a highly specialized specialist who could give a conclusion regarding the integrity of the spinal cord. If the spinal cord was damaged, then Ellen would be paralyzed and unable to stab herself in the heart. But soon the expert miraculously changed his mind and abandoned his investigation, stating that according to his report, the spinal cord had not been damaged. However, the conclusion itself was never attached to the case materials. It also didn't bother anyone that with such numerous and extensive wounds on Ellen's body, there was very little blood around, which could indicate that someone had wiped it off, but no one even bothered to look for possible washed-away marks. The luminol used in such cases was simply ignored. The trash cans in the apartment were also not examined, and if there was any evidence in them, they were lost forever. The unhappy parents were informed of the death of their only daughter by the Goldberg family, for they were the first on the scene. Ellen's family lived in another town, a couple hundred miles away from their daughter, but they arrived as quickly as they could. Santa and George couldn't believe what was happening, and flatly denied that Ellen could have taken her own life. But the grief-stricken parents were never given a clear answer to the question of what happened that night with their daughter, only a dry conclusion and refusal to initiate criminal proceedings. Then the Greenbergs decided to conduct their own investigation with the involvement of independent specialists. Soon they were contacted by a private detective who offered his help completely free of charge because he himself wanted to understand this confusing case. The detective studied the materials and came to the conclusion that Ellen's body was moved after her death. This was evidenced by a dried blood trickle from her nose toward her ear. But Ellen was found in a sitting position, so the blood couldn't have traveled that way. He also found smeared stains on the floor, very similar to drag marks. In addition, after a second one, the guard remembered that Sam, who had asked for help, was wearing a tracksuit and said he had come back from the gym, but he was wearing boots. He did not have a bag with a change of shoes with him. But despite the new evidence and witness testimony, the parents of the deceased were again denied a criminal case or further investigation. The Greenbergs were even denied case files, including a recording of Sam's phone call to the police, as well as surveillance footage showing the time he walked toward the gym and then returned from there. 4 years later, a new young officer has joined the county's homicide unit, taking a position as an assistant prosecutor. He had heard about the unsolved, strange case while he was still studying at the university, and now he decided to get materials from the archives and get to the truth. His attention was drawn to the injury to the back of the head, which could be the first to indicate that Ellen had been attacked from behind when she hadn't expected it. Also of interest to him was the note that there was no spinal cord injury, but there was no official document to prove it. All of the ADA's attempts to find any report regarding the spinal injuries were unsuccessful. It was allegedly lost somewhere in the archives. Then he made an official request to the Center of Forensic Medical Examination to get a duplicate of the document. And then it turned out that no one had ever given such a conclusion, and the body was not examined for spinal cord injuries. At the same time, a fragment of the spine had somehow miraculously been preserved and could be re-examined. An independent specialist was brought in and determined that the spinal cord had been damaged in several places at once, so that Ellen could not have inflicted further injuries on herself. The resulting materials were passed to the police, but there, after reviewing them, again refused to initiate criminal proceedings. In 2018, the coroner gave an official conclusion, which stated that all 20 wounds the deceased had inflicted on herself, and there can be no doubt about it. New investigation. Once again, amid a stalemate of justice, the grief-stricken parents hired a new attorney with whom they recollected all the documents, previously unrecorded evidence, facts, and witness statements. In 2019, they filed a new lawsuit against the coroner and experts who had improperly done their jobs and effectively collapsed the case. The following spring, the lawsuit was heard and settled, but trials never began due to the pandemic raging around the world. It was expected that the case would be reclassified, but due to the negligence of the police and medical examiners, as well as the resulting confusion, crucial evidence was lost and irretrievably lost. The parents of the dead girl even created a page in the social network dedicated to the progress of the investigation, where they share official materials, new details, and versions. Family, friends, and colleagues of Ellen insist that she could not take her own life, and even do it in such a heinous way. Ellen, in principle, did not tolerate the sight of blood. It made her sick, and she also had a low pain threshold, because of which she has never done tattoos or piercings. In the summer of 2022, the case was dismissed again, but the Greenbergs got it transferred to the district attorney's office, where a new prosecutor took over. The investigation began again, 11 years after those terrible events. But to this day, the investigation has never been finalized. How did Sam's fate turn out? For the first year after the tragedy, Samuel tried to keep in touch with his estranged father-in-law and mother-in-law. However, he did not take any part in the investigations initiated by them. He flatly refused to communicate with the police, and it seemed that he was not interested in the case. He himself adhered to the official version that his fiancé himself inflicted fatal injuries. Goldberg soon found solace with another girl, and just a year later married her. Together with his wife, he moved to another state and stopped contact with the Greenberg family. Now he and his wife are raising 2 children together, and about the dead ex-fiancé, Sam tries not to remember. What do you guys think? Is Sam responsible for Ellen's death? The case of Paula Ortega. In early 2023, the city of Sangolquí in Ecuador's Pichincha region was rocked by a tragic incident. It wasn't just the brutality of the crime that shocked the community, but its motive, a mere $600 theft. Could the life of 37-year-old Paula Ortega Alcocer really be valued at just $600? Born in March 1986, Paula was the second child in a large family. She excelled at Dario Figueroa Lara School and later attended the Polytechnic University, where she developed a keen interest in the hospitality industry. After her studies, Paula actively contributed to the growth of her family's business, which specialized in party goods manufacturing. The Ortega Alcocer family was well-to-do and renowned in Sangolquí and neighboring Ecuadorian towns. Paula's father, in his youth, began building a business supplying party goods across Ecuador. The venture became quite successful, enabling him to start his own production of balloons, piñatas, and other festive paraphernalia. This expansion led to the opening of several stores. The Alcocer family's party shops were located not only in Sangolquí, but also in Ecuador's capital, Quito. Each family member played a role in the development and maintenance of their enterprise. The father expanded the main production line, opening new workshops for balloons, garlands, caps, and various party items. Each of the 3 children managed a store, tailoring it to their vision. Paula's entrepreneurial spirit led her beyond just managing a store. She organized a party planning service within the company, which turned out to be a great success. It seemed Paula had found her calling, bringing joy to people, which made her truly happy. While the business ventures of the Ortega family flourished for a long time, unfortunately, Paula Ortega's personal life was not as successful. Despite her youthful and joyous demeanor, she faced significant hardships in her private life. Paula's first marriage to Carlos Pedro turned out to be unhappy. After the birth of their daughter, Carlos developed an alcohol addiction. He began disappearing from home and stealing money from Paula's store. His infidelity was the last straw, leading Paula to end the marriage and find herself alone with her daughter. This period was particularly challenging for Paula, as she lost hope in finding personal happiness. However, the psychological support of her family and her passion for her work helped her regain a sense of normalcy in her life. A decade later, Paula met Christian Diego. A tall, dark-haired, and handsome man, Christian was 4 years younger than Paula. Having lost faith in finding a worthy partner, Paula was cautious with the persistent young suitor. Christian proved to be calm and reliable, quickly bonding with Paula's daughter, which greatly impressed Paula. After 2 years of relationship, her heart warmed to him, leading to a beautiful wedding ceremony. Christian embraced Paula's daughter as his own, and they soon welcomed another daughter, Maria. Christian and Paula spent 5 years together, with Christian fully integrating into Paula's father's company. He was entrusted with finding locations for new stores, which often kept him away from home. Coming from a modest working-class family, Christian had always dreamed of owning a large business. Unfortunately, some people can conceal their dark sides so well that one might live for years alongside ruthless criminals without suspecting a thing. However, the truth eventually comes to light when evil erupts in the most unexpected ways. Paula Ortega and her husband, Christian, appeared to be the epitome of a happy, successful couple to their family, friends, and neighbors. However, this perception was only surface deep. In 2000, Paula's father passed away after a long illness. His death not only devastated the family, but also turned their business upside down. Christian, driven by a desire for power and the wealth it brought, eagerly sought to take Paula's father's place in the business. However, his lack of skill led to one failed deal after another. As a result, Christian began to vent his frustration on his family. Initially in secret, but later openly, he began to abandon his family, indulging in a life of debauchery. Women and alcohol became his escape into a world of pleasure and recklessness. With Paula's father no longer there to restrain him, Christian's true nature began to surface. Having already experienced a traumatic marriage, Paula refused to endure this behavior again. The couple's home became a battleground of endless scandals, revealing Christian's true nature as an ambitious egotist, craving only power and unquestioned obedience. After a particularly nasty argument, Paula secretly filed for divorce, fearing her husband's reaction. The news of this drastically changed Christian's behavior. Unwilling to lose his place in the successful family, he stopped his outrageous conduct and appeared to transform for the better. He expressed remorse, claiming to be caught up in a whirlwind of confusion, and professed his love and value for his family. His eloquence persuaded Paula. Not wanting to be alone again, she gave him a second chance. In a gesture of reconciliation, Christian suggested organizing a romantic dinner at their home. Paula agreed. She sent their daughters to her parents' house and began preparing for the evening. Inside, she was aflutter with excitement. Deep down, she still dreamed of a happy, strong family and was doing everything she could to preserve it. The evening at the Ortega home was one of celebration and comfort. The living room was lit up with festive garlands, and the dining table was warmly illuminated by the yellow glow of candles. Christian uncorked a bottle of dry white wine while Paula served a hot meal. The night could have been genuinely reconciliatory, had it not been for a sudden proposal from Christian that disrupted the peace. Christian, a co-owner of the Alcazar company, revealed to his wife a significant misstep. In his pursuit to replace Paula's father and gain full control, he had made a costly mistake in an important tender, leading to substantial losses for the company. Now, the firm desperately needed a new investor, implying that a part of the company would officially change hands. Paula was adamantly against this, believing her father's business should remain a family affair. Despite Christian's persuasion, she stood her ground, infuriating him. He had already found an investor and was eager to complete the deal without complications. Their dinner, and by extension their relationship, soured. January 2nd, 2023, seemed like any other day. Paula took her younger daughter to the playroom before heading to her shop for work. She had a large order to prepare, involving assembling balloon fountains and party decorations for a themed event. During her lunch break, 2 men knocked on the shop's door. Although closed, Paula opened it, expecting a courier to pick up the balloon bouquets. The men, slim and dressed identically as if they were twins, startled her with their dark hoodies. They lingered, scanning the shop before splitting up. As Paula called out to them, stating the shop was closed for lunch, they cornered her against the wall. The tension of this silent scene was broken by a knock on the glass door. The men hastily exited the shop. A smiling young courier arrived, unwittingly rescuing Paula from the unknown assailants. Shaken, Paula handed over the package, closed the shop, and with trembling hands, called her mother. She was visibly frightened, a sentiment she expressed over the phone. Paula's mother suggested reporting the unsettling incident at her shop to the police, but Paula declined, attributing her reaction to mere fright since nothing harmful had actually occurred. She didn't reopen her shop that day, her thoughts consumed by Christian's actions, and the identity and motives of the two mysterious men. Seeking solace, Paula decided to take a stroll through the city. She stopped at a nearby cafe for some coffee, walked through the park to breathe in the fresh air, and then visited her sister. Over cups of fragrant tea, they engaged in a heart-to-heart conversation. Overwhelmed by the day's shocking events, Paula confided in her sister not only about the scary encounter at her shop, but also about the difficulties in her marriage. She shared how Christian had drastically changed after her father's passing, indulging in alcohol and openly being unfaithful. Paula chose not to mention his proposal about merging the company with a new investor, as she habitually kept her personal struggles to herself. But that day, her emotions overpowered her pride and shame over tolerating such demeaning treatment. "He's a peculiar being. My sister was lively, happy, cheerful, enterprising, hardworking, an extremely gentle and kind mother. She should have been receiving energy from him," Adriana Ortega, Paula's sister, would later say. Paula spoke of her long-term life plans, her desire for her daughters to grow up and become professionals, and her intention to continue her business. She was selfless and tirelessly hardworking, Adriana recalled. After her emotional talk with her sister, Paula headed home. A phone call from Christian interrupted her. He was picking up their daughter from the playroom and would come to the shop to pick her up as well. His hurried speech was interspersed with children's voices. Paula didn't get a chance to tell him about the frightening incident at her shop, especially since she suspected him to be involved. Reluctantly, Paula returned to work, once again prioritizing her family's well-being over her own. She didn't have to wait long. Christian arrived alone, explaining that their daughter had wanted to go home, and he couldn't deny his little princess. He informed Paula that the girls were at home and eagerly waiting for hamburgers for dinner. In what has become a modern family tradition, Christian took Paula not to the nearest fast food joint, but to a restaurant courtyard at a shopping center, several blocks from their home. Parking the car beside a secluded wall and locking it securely, he left Paula inside to collect their order. Relaxing in the passenger seat after a taxing day, Paula closed her eyes, unaware of the impending danger. Shortly, she recognized two familiar figures near the car, talking loudly and circling the vehicle. Recognizing them as the unexpected visitors from her shop, Paula tried to stay calm, trusting that the car was secure and Christian would return soon. Suddenly, the car's lights flashed and the door locks disengaged. In a panic, Paula scrambled to the back seat, hiding between the seats and covering her head with her arms, but she was trapped with no escape. One intruder casually got into the driver's seat while the other joined him in the back, pinning Paula down even more. She felt something warm trickling down her arm before darkness enveloped her. Paula sustained 11 knife wounds to her neck and 2 to her face. After the brutal attack, the assailants fled the scene, leaving Paula alone and gravely injured. Christian returned just 7 minutes later to a horrific sight. The car's interior was drenched in blood. Frantically, he called emergency services, but struggled to clearly communicate the situation and give emergency coordinates. He then called Paula's mother to report the attack before driving to the hospital himself. Tragically, Paula succumbed to her injuries in the emergency room, passing away before receiving necessary medical attention. Christian, overwhelmed by grief and shock at the loss of his wife, reacted with loud cries and throwing chairs in the waiting room. The sudden violent end of Paula Ortega left a community in shock and a family in profound grief, raising questions about the motive and identity of the attackers. The initial theory of the prosecution was a violent end inflicted during a robbery. It was later discovered that $600 and a gold necklace were missing from Paula's purse. This began an investigation. The prosecution's theory was confirmed when footage from city cameras showed 2 unknown men who had visited Paula's store earlier that day in the vicinity. Both were in hoodies, making it impossible to create a clear image of their faces, and their vague descriptions provided no clarity. 2 months after the tragic event, Paula's family demanded justice. But the investigation was at a standstill. A turning point came when Adriana Ortega, Paula's sister, gave testimony casting doubt on Christian's innocence. She informed the investigators about a conversation she had with Paula on the day of the incident. Adriana also mentioned that Christian regularly committed infidelity and domestic violence against Paula, who was contemplating divorce. This provided a perfect motive, as Christian, driven by ambition, could not afford to lose his wealth and status in the event of a divorce. The prosecution investigated this angle. During a search of their home, incriminating messages were found on Christian's phone, indicating multiple affairs and turbulent marital relations. A critical piece of evidence was documentation prepared for the transfer of the company to a private individual, which Paula had refused to sign. Following these revelations, the incident was investigated as a suspected homicide. As the prosecution continued to gather information implicating Christian Diego, new evidence emerged, unraveling the complex web of the couple's relationship. 2 weeks after the incident, we found out he transferred $2,000 to an unknown woman's account, said Adriana, Paula's sister, adding another layer of suspicion to the already convoluted case. The most shocking aspect, as claimed by relatives, was that Christian made a payment using Paula's account while she was dying from her injuries. Instead of immediately helping his gravely wounded wife, Christian seemingly bided his time. Investigations confirmed this information. The identity of the woman who received the transfer from Christian that day was established as 28-year-old Laura Castillo. Urgently summoned for questioning, she revealed that she had noticed her bank card missing a couple of days earlier, but didn't think much of it, as her brother often used her card. The electronic payment records showed a transfer of $2,000 from Christian on January 2nd at 20:05. However, Laura denied any acquaintance with Christian. Her solid alibi at the time of the incident absolved her of any involvement. She was released, and the investigation hit a dead end again. Days later, Laura returned to the police, stating her brother had returned the bank card, as she had suspected. She provided a full description of her brother's appearance, which matched one of the criminals caught on surveillance cameras near the car. In the chaos of fleeing the crime scene, one attacker forgot to pull up his hood. The identities of Byron and Mortines Castillo, two repeat offenders with a substantial criminal history, were established. The brothers were apprehended. But what could possibly link two seasoned criminals to a seemingly respectable and successful family man? Further investigation revealed that the attacks on Paula had been carried out repeatedly by the Castillo brothers. But why were these repeat offenders targeting this young woman? On December 8, 2022, Paula Ortega faced a harrowing incident at a gas station when her car was stolen. Distracted by a young man, his accomplice quickly jumped behind the wheel and sped off. Fortunately, her daughters weren't in the car that day. Surveillance footage identified the two familiar culprits. Coincidentally, on the day of the theft, Paula unknowingly came face to face with her future assailant. However, the car theft case took an unexpected turn when Christian intervened, claiming the thieves had contacted him. He met with them and retrieved all of Paula's personal belongings, including her wallet. This development cast further doubt on Christian's innocence. Seasoned investigators were puzzled by the widower's boldness in shielding the criminals. Surveillance cameras played a crucial role in identifying the carjackers. As Christian realized he was under suspicion, he concocted a new defense narrative involving extortion by two criminal brothers demanding a large sum of money. But before he could deploy his version of events, the police executed a swift interrogation strategy. Separating the suspects and suggesting one had confessed, they obtained a confession from Martin Castillo. He admitted that more than 2 months earlier, Christian had paid them $2,000 to murder his wife, promising another $2,000 after the deed. During a reenactment, Martin demonstrated how he inflicted 11 fatal knife wounds on the terrified woman. Realizing the crime was uncovered, he remorselessly divulged all details of their arrangement with Christian. Martin revealed that the car theft and the attack on Paula's shop were also parts of Christian's plan to pressure her. By chance, Paula lived a few hours longer than intended. On November 29, 2023, all 3 suspects appeared in court. The prosecution presented a comprehensive picture of the murder day, pieced together from various sources. Videos from surveillance cameras in the area where Christian parked the car, subjected to audio and video forensic analysis, unveiled a chilling, soul-freezing narrative. In chilling surveillance footage, Christian Diego is seen exiting his car and heading towards a shopping center elevator. Moments later, he remotely unlocks his car from half a block away, allowing two assailants to enter the vehicle and attack Paula. The prosecutor's report noted Christian's odd behavior post-attack, repeatedly looking back, approaching the car, pausing, returning, pacing back and forth, and making phone calls. Surprisingly, upon finding his wife bleeding profusely, he showed no shock or urgency to help her, instead driving her to a distant hospital. Christian's actions, meticulously reconstructed from surveillance videos, particularly in the first 4 minutes after Paula's attack, were cold and calculating. As she bled in the car but was still alive, Christian, standing nearby, callously transferred money to his accomplices for the assault. Paula's family lawyers urged the court to consider these videos as aggravating factors in the crime. The reconstructed sequence of events presented in court proves the crime was premeditated. Hours before the attack, around 1:30 p.m., two individuals entered Paula's store, dropped off nearby by Christian. This implies the crime was intended to occur earlier, during the lunchtime closure, when Paula was alone. Prosecutor Marlon Calderon highlighted inconsistencies. How did the assailants know the couple would be at the eatery if they weren't tailing them? Yet they arrived on time to commit the crime. Christian's actions, not fully raising the car window, unlocking the doors near the eatery, his 1,000 times pacing before aiding his wife, phone calls, and not seeking immediate medical attention at a nearby clinic, are key evidence for charging him with orchestrating the femicide. Femicide, defined as the intentional murder of a woman simply because she is a woman, was a central theme in the trial of Christian and Paula Ortega's troubled relationship. Shockingly present in today's society, this hate crime was exemplified through Christian's younger age, which seemed to fuel his contempt and abuse towards Paula. Despite her success, Paula lived in a metaphorical golden cage, masking and enabling her husband's tyrannical behavior, allowing him to assert dominance. Years of silence culminated in Christian's sinister plot to seize control of Paula's thriving party empire and gain sole guardianship of their daughter, Maria. Testimonies from over 10 witnesses, including neighbors, friends, and acquaintances, alongside thorough examination of internal and external family communications, revealed Christian's true motives and objectives. Without legal signing rights, he sought to coerce Paula into transferring her company shares. However, his plan failed. Christian didn't physically harm Paula but inflicted severe psychological abuse, artfully concealed under the guise of a perfect family life. According to the Prosecutor General's report, video evidence led to Christian's preventive isolation as the crime's orchestrator. This measure isn't an arrest but a strategy to neutralize a societal threat. Following this action, Christian planned to flee. In the high-profile case against Christian Diego, accused of orchestrating his wife's demise, his defense team worked tirelessly to portray him as a victim. However, they were unable to refute crucial evidence like surveillance footage and falsified company transfer documents. Desperate, the defense then attempted to depict the accused as suffering from a mental disorder, citing episodes of sudden rage. Multiple psychiatrists evaluated Christian, but he was declared competent. His defense counsel, realizing the gravity of the situation, advised Christian to flee the country, asking if his passport was ready and suggesting he buy a ticket to Panama for the next day. However, this plan to escape justice failed. Christian's search for Central American flight tickets raised alarm bells with the authorities. The prosecutor swiftly ordered an 8-hour detainment of Christian Diego, followed by charges and the disclosure of case details to a judge specializing in domestic violence cases. Pending trial, the suspect was held in preliminary detention, pursued as the alleged mastermind behind a heinous act that left 2 young children motherless and an entire family grieving an irreplaceable loss. The Ortega family demands justice for this atrocious crime, emphasizing the devastating impact on the children and their irreplaceable loss. In a case that gripped public attention, the jury concluded that Christian and his 2 accomplices were guilty of a meticulously planned, intentional act of extreme brutality. The unremorseful Christian and his associates were sentenced to 26 years in prison. The municipal authorities of Rumiñahui expressed their solidarity with the tragic loss of Paula Alcocer. The institution extends its deepest sympathies to the family and friends affected by this incident. The unfortunate demise of this esteemed businesswoman, friend, mother, and wife, who contributed significantly to the Camptons' development and brought prosperity to those in her circle, is deeply mourned. Their statement read, Paula's case emerged as a prominent instance of violence against women, following the Latin American Association for Alternative Development's report of 332 fatalities due to gender-based violence in 2022. Massive surge going on right now at the New Hampshire home where a missing little girl's father and stepmother used to live. Harmony Montgomery vanished while in her father's custody years ago at the age of 5. Investigators may have a new lead in the Harmony Montgomery chase 3 years after the little girl was last seen. The FBI's here, so there's something or something, yeah. Hey, fans, it's got to be the I can't do something I'm sitting on again. In December 2021, the name Harmony Montgomery first hit headlines across the United States of America when a missing persons investigation was launched to find the 7-year-old girl. Since then, her father and stepmother have both been arrested and charged. A home where she used to live in Manchester, New Hampshire, has been searched for days on end, and the reward for information leading to her discovery has topped $140,000. But here's the strange thing. Before all of this, nobody seems to have set eyes on Harmony for more than 2 years. So, who is Harmony Montgomery? Why did it take so long for anyone to notice that this little girl has gone missing? Where has she been at all this time? And is it now too late to save her life? Hi, and welcome to Mysterious 7. I'm Michael, and today I want to take you guys through the story of little Harmony Montgomery, who dropped off the face of the earth back in 2019. Little Harmony wasn't born under a lucky star. Both her parents have a problematic history of substance abuse, and she had to cope with a visual disability in one eye through all of that. Her mother, Crystal Sorey, a resident of Massachusetts, lost custody due to addiction problems when her daughter was just about 4 years old. Sorey had to surrender Harmony to the state in the summer of 2018. After that, the girl's father, Adam Montgomery, secured sole custody in February 2019 and moved her to New Hampshire. Harmony was living with her father, Adam, as well as his wife, Kayla Montgomery, and their children at the property at the time when she went missing. The little girl had been in and out of foster care for much of her life, according to her files. Sometimes kids do get caught up in the legal system for years at a time. But Harmony wasn't one of the kids who slipped through the cracks of the foster care system. She went missing from her own father's house, and he never reported the matter, nor tried to reach out for help, nor find his daughter. So what exactly is his involvement in the disappearance of his child? Police said they first became aware of the case when they received a call from the girl's mother, Crystal Sorey, in November 2021. She had been trying to locate her daughter for months, but said she had been blocked by her ex-husband from contacting her. She said she last saw her daughter during a FaceTime video call with Adam Montgomery around Easter 2019. Sorey told the police that, since then, she unsuccessfully made attempts to find Harmony by contacting various schools and driving by addresses associated with Adam Montgomery. She said last year, he and his partner Kayla blocked all communication with her. According to news reports, Sorey had been sharing concerns over Harmony's well-being with Blair and Jonathan Miller, a couple who fostered and eventually adopted Harmony's younger brother Jameson in June 2019. The two were also actively trying to make a connection with Harmony and told Sorey multiple times they'd adopt her if the need arose. Harmony spent a lot of time in foster care with her younger biological brother Jameson. It seems that the couple, who said they repeatedly told Harmony's mother that they were willing to adopt the girl if need be, was very much interested in the hunt or the missing child. The couple actively tried to make contact with Harmony throughout the past 2 years, as they said Jameson missed her and that he'd cry at night for her. The couple said they weren't ever able to speak with Harmony and kept in touch with Sorey about her attempts to open a line of communication with the girl's father. On November 18, 2021, Sorey reported Harmony missing to the Manchester Police Department. Sorey made her first public appearance at the Candlelight Vigil on January 8th after authorities searched the last known residence of her daughter. "I just don't feel that in my heart," Sori told reporters at the time. "Like, I don't feel like I lost her. And a mother knows. A mother knows if your baby's here or not. I know she's here." She had this message for her daughter. "Hi, baby. If you can see me and hear me, I want you to know that I never stopped looking for you, and I won't stop fighting until I find you, okay? You stay strong, and Mommy's right here fighting for you. I love you." Now, this is where the timeline of events starts to get confusing. And that's typically the point in any investigation when you know someone has been lying. Mrs. Sori told police she had not been able to contact her daughter since they spoke on a video call in April 2019. After that, she said, Montgomery cut off all contact between her and her daughter. But Montgomery claimed to investigators he last saw his daughter around Thanksgiving 2019, claiming that Mrs. Sori had picked up her from Manchester to take her to live with her. The criminal complaint says that Montgomery claimed to believe his daughter was living with his ex and did not show much emotion or reaction when officers said they were concerned whether Harmony was alive when they contacted him in December. His story was also contradicted by Kayla Montgomery's account, who said she last saw Harmony the day after Thanksgiving, when her husband said he was driving her to see Mrs. Sori. And in some additional testimony, Adam Montgomery's uncle Kevin Montgomery told investigators that he had not seen Harmony or his nephew since late 2019 when she was 5 years old. Police interviews with other family members revealed Montgomery was allegedly abusive toward his daughter, including giving her a black eye, forcing her to clean the toilet with her toothbrush, and making her stand in a corner for hours as punishment. Montgomery's brother Michael Montgomery told investigators he had concerns that Adam was physically abusive to the child and was super short with her. Kevin Montgomery said he noticed Harmony had a black eye in July 2019, which his nephew confessed to causing by hitting her in the face, according to the criminal complaint. "I bashed her around this house," he said his nephew told him. Kevin said he contacted DCYF at that time, and he also noticed that his nephew subjected Harmony to other forms of abusive discipline, including scrubbing a toilet with her toothbrush and her being spanked hard on the butt. A neighbor said that it was a bad situation at the property, describing lots of people living there at different times, adults seen arguing in the street, junk left piled up in the yard, and the electricity is switched off at one point. The electricity was turned off, and they ran the generator all summer with the wiring running through the window. The neighbor said the Montgomerys were basically squatting at the home when it had fallen into foreclosure, and Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery were refusing to leave. "We didn't intermingle with them as it was a bad situation," she said. "There were lots of different people living there, piles of junk in the driveway, junk outside." She said she went away for the Thanksgiving holidays in 2019 and returned to find the family had finally packed up and moved out. And another neighbor on the street where Harmony lived also says that the family moved on Thanksgiving 2019, the same time Adam Montgomery says he last saw the missing child. Manchester police said definitively that Harmony has not been seen since around October or November 2019 when she was 5 years old, yet a missing persons investigation was only launched in December 2021. Mrs. Sori has gone on public record to state that her daughter was failed by everybody. Despite multiple efforts to reach out to her daughter, or at least find out more, no authorities concerned paid attention. And the girl's father clearly couldn't care less what happened to the child. The last confirmed sighting of Harmony by law enforcement was on the 11th of September 2019, when Manchester police officers were called to the home on 77 Guildford Street in Manchester, where she lived. Police Chief Oldenburg, who is in charge of the case now, previously said the last police call-up to the property was in October 2019, but confirmed he had muddled the dates in a press briefing on the 12th of January. Despite the date change, the police chief said investigators are still working on the belief that Harmony was last seen in October or November of that year. Harmony's father and his wife were both arrested and charged on counts related to the missing child in early January. Adam Montgomery was arrested on the 4th of January and charged with second-degree felony assault 2 misdemeanor counts of endangering the welfare of a child, and 1 misdemeanor count of interference with custody. On the assault charge, he is accused of striking Harmony in the face sometime in July 2019, giving her a black eye according to the criminal complaint. Officials said Montgomery is not cooperating with the investigation into his daughter's disappearance, and he has refused to say where she is. The day after her husband's arrest, Kayla Montgomery was also arrested on 1 felony charge of welfare fraud for allegedly fraudulently collecting welfare benefits for the missing children between December 2019 and June 2021. Mrs. Montgomery, who has 3 children with her husband, is accused of obtaining $1,500 in food stamp benefits meant for Harmony between December 2019 and June 2021, even though the girl was not living with them. Prosecutors have now dropped that welfare fraud charge and added 3 new charges, 1 count of theft by deception and 2 misdemeanor charges of welfare fraud. The charges accuse Mrs. Montgomery of making intentionally false statements about her stepdaughter's whereabouts in February and March 2021 to claim benefits. After the police investigation into the case amped up, several disturbing details about Harmony's father came to light. Adam Montgomery has a history of violence and a long criminal record, including convictions for shooting a man in the head in a drug deal just 6 months before Harmony was born. He was also convicted in 2010 for attacking 2 women at gunpoint. It has emerged that Montgomery is a suspect in the cold case murder of a 28-year-old man in Lynn, New Hampshire, back in February 2008. Darlin Guzman was found shot in the chest in the parking lot of the former White Hen convenience store in Lynn's Austin Square on the night of the 10th of February 2008. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. A source in Boston law enforcement told reporters that Montgomery, who was 18 at the time, and 2 members of his family, who were not named, had been the focus of the murder investigation since day 1. The 3 family members had been in contact with the victim earlier that day and planned to meet with him at the convenience store before the meeting culminated in gunfire, according to the source. The victim's car was later found abandoned in the direction of Bedford, New Hampshire, where Montgomery lived at the time. No one has ever been charged with Mr. Guzman's murder, but the source said Montgomery remains the focus of the investigation to this day. Almost 14 years on from that killing, Adam Montgomery and his wife are now charged on counts related to his missing daughter. However, while charged with serious offenses including child abuse and welfare fraud, no charges have been brought against anyone directly in connection to Harmony's disappearance. So why was Harmony not reported missing for 2 years? Mrs. Sori has accused the authorities of failing her daughter. She said she made multiple attempts to report concerns to child services. After November 18th, when she contacted Manchester police saying she believed her daughter was missing, someone finally paid attention. Police officers contacted the New Hampshire Division for Children, Youth, and Families, or DCYF, about the location of the missing child. Then, on the 27th of December, the DCYF reported that it was also unable to locate Harmony. Manchester police announced a search was launched on the 31st of December. Emails sent by Mrs. Sori to the Manchester mayor's office begging for help in finding her daughter have also now come out. "Please, I'm begging for help in finding my daughter," she wrote on the 29th of December. In her emails, Mrs. Sori said Adam Montgomery had never enrolled their daughter in school and that she has missed important doctor's appointments she's had since a baby due to a disability in her eye. The emails were sent just 2 days before police finally reported Harmony missing. As well as the repeated attempts to raise the alarm, the family was well known to child services. Newly released records released on the 12th of January have emerged showing that police officers were called to the Guilford Street home at least 10 times between February 2019, when Montgomery got custody of Harmony, and when she was last seen in the fall. Reports ranged from claims of domestic disturbances to animal welfare and concerns about the living conditions in the home. The DCYF was notified about some of the incidents. New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu announced on the 12th of January that the DCYF is carrying out an internal review of its handling of Harmony's case. However, the governor defended the state's work, saying, "As soon as we found out that this child may not have been showing up for school for quite some time, it was reported up to us. The team got right on it. It wasn't a delay. It didn't sit in a file on somebody's desk." An independent investigation is also being carried out by the Massachusetts Office of the Child Advocate after Harmony was moved from Massachusetts into the custody of her father in New Hampshire in February 2019. Now, officials in New Hampshire and Massachusetts are passing the blame between each other. The New Hampshire governor sent a letter to Massachusetts court officials slamming a judge for placing Harmony in the care of her monster father, giving his violent past and long rap sheet. Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker responded to the criticism by saying he felt his pain, but said he wants to wait and see the results of the independent review by the Massachusetts Office of the Child Advocate. Investigators have revealed very few details about what they think may have happened to Harmony. The Guilford Street property has been the focus of much of the search, with investigators seen in the home and the backyard for multiple days. However, Manchester police said the search had concluded there. It is not clear if anything of interest was uncovered, and no other locations where searches have been identified. Chief Aldenberg insisted on the 12th of January, but they are still working on the belief that Harmony is alive. However, he admitted that he was a little discouraged by the case so far and pleaded with the public to come forward with information. He added, "Somebody out there knows something." Despite the national attention and the painstaking efforts to find the missing child, investigators appear to have made very little headway. Though concerning, the lack of progress is perhaps unsurprising, as whoever has information about what happened to the little girl has had a more than a 2-year head start on the investigators. On the 14th of June 2022, law enforcement officials were seen transporting a refrigerator and taking potential pieces of evidence from the scene at a Manchester home where Harmony Montgomery's father and stepmother, Adam and Kayla, once lived. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer stated that bringing in the refrigerator is usually used to maintain biological evidence. If they found a body or body parts in a freeze, law enforcement would want to maintain the level of decomposition. Coffindaffer said, "I have a really creepy feeling about this. It's not good." Several law enforcement agencies were seen outside the Union Street apartment complex, where investigators were focused on the second-floor unit, where Montgomery's father, Adam Montgomery, and his now estranged wife, Kayla, once lived. A woman called Darcy Hambleton, who lives behind the apartment complex, told a reporter that she briefly saw police enter the building on Monday, and it seemed casual. But by 9 a.m. Tuesday, Hambleton said she saw a full-scale investigation from her balcony, which included 6 to 7 officers behind the building at any given time. She added that she saw an individual in an FBI t-shirt and one man in a hazmat suit, and noted that the front of the complex is a media circus. Investigators were later seen taking a refrigerator wrapped in biohazard tape from the apartment and loading it into a truck. A camera was also used to search the sewer in front of the building. "I knew about the case since 2021 when Harmony was initially reported missing. It's all over Manchester on signs and billboards," Hambleton said. "But I had no idea that her father had lived behind me." Noting that she has a 7-year-old daughter herself, Hambleton added that her heart is in my stomach right now, thinking that something could have happened to that little girl here. After this raid, Crystal Sorey stated publicly, "I know in my heart this is no longer a rescue mission. They're looking for a body." In a disturbing follow-up, Kelsey Small, one-time girlfriend of the father of missing Harmony Montgomery, was recently found dead in Manchester, police said. Small, 27, was with Adam Montgomery when police found the homeless couple sleeping in a car on December 31, 2021, in the early days of the search for Harmony. The cause of death is still pending, but it does not appear suspicious, said police spokeswoman Heather Hamill. According to court records, police were on their 4th day of searching for Harmony when they found Adam Montgomery and Small sleeping in a car on New Year's Eve. The car was parked on Harvell Street on the west side, close to the Gifford Street home where the Montgomery family had lived 2 years earlier. Small told police she had been romantically involved with Adam Montgomery for more than a year. She knew he had 4 children from previous relationships But he was not in touch with any of them and never talked about Harmony, she told police. She had no idea where Harmony might be. Police eventually arrested Adam Montgomery, but never charged Small with any crime. So what happened to Harmony Montgomery, and where is she now? If her father is innocent, why did he never report her disappearance? And when her mother, Crystal, tried to find her daughter, why weren't police and the local Child Protective Services on her side? As this case unfolds, we hope that Harmony's mother finds the justice she deserves, whether her daughter is dead or living. Police have stated that Harmony is 8, and she should be wearing glasses due to her blindness in one eye. It's a heartbreaking story, and we hope with everything we've got that somehow, against all odds, Harmony Montgomery might still be found alive.